So, I mean, I guess we should establish from the get-go that you have been helping me write videos for a little bit now.
Yeah, I've been consulting as fuck.
Ghostwriting.
I've been yeah. This fucker's been taking credit for all of my work.
I have done nothing. Specifically, I wanted to go over this because you and I basically did. I think it's fair to say it's like a 60-40 split in terms of like the writing. You know, right? Or is that fair?
I mean, it's interesting because like I'm here to help with the facts, but like it's weird.
First of all, no, you're not.
I don't know how to put a number.
That is not why you're in this. You're in it because you're a good writer, and you know things I don't, which is not the same thing. Otherwise, you would be a consultant, and that's not what you are.
Thanks.
Smiles warmly. Play the sound effect.
No, it's copyrighted.
It's on Patreon.
I'll report you.
You play it in reverse there. The goddamn video still isn't up yet, but it will be soon. It's a video about King Kong video game. And while doing research for the game, it started with me like just trying it out one night. I bought a copy for the Xbox that didn't work right and like didn't load past halfway through the first level, and just the trigger points didn't activate, and I thought I was very confused. And then because I couldn't play the game, I decided, well, I might as well be productive somehow. Let's watch the movie. Surely that'll be relevant. And I'm actually undecided. Do you think that helped at all? Do you think that like made a big difference?
I think it made a big difference. Yes, those are the words I would choose.
Because I don't. I really think that video would have been mostly the same if we had not watched that movie.
I think it made me different, you know?
Yeah, what dawned on me after watching the movie is that we could have made an entire video about the movie instead of the game. And it was a really scary ledge to have to walk back from. Especially now knowing, like, we didn't even know how much there was to say on the game. Remember whenever I came to you and I was like, okay, I need an idea for like a really quick short video to tide people over. I need something quick. Mm-hmm. Do you know how long that video is, Sam? Does that tell you the final runtime?
I don't know.
It's like over 30 minutes. It's one of the longest I've made in years.
That's so cool.
It's so fucked up.
This is a Kong-sized video.
You're so true for this.
Big video for big monkey.
But believe it or not, despite the absolute girth of the video, a substantial amount had to be cut, including an entire video's worth of information on the movie instead of the game. Which, okay, how much do you remember of the movie?
I mean, I try to block it out, but it comes in bursts in the night, you know?
Yeah. Someone will say monkey and you'll get a flashback. You'll have to sit down for a few minutes.
I have not been to the zoo since we started working on this because I just can't. Every time I see the gorilla enclosure, I envision them ice skating in a genuinely romantic scene with a human woman. I can't
fucking believe that scene.
I thought it was a scene from a movie.
It's like 3 fucking minutes long.
It's 3 minutes long and it ends with him exploding.
Do you remember the behind the scenes clip where Peter Jackson is like, nah, I had to really fight to get that scene in.
Yeah, they did. They wanted to stop me.
Yeah. I had people telling me no.
I said, no, this is going to make the movie.
This is an important scene. We need a moment of calm here.
That
movie was a labor of love for Peter Jackson. He said this in like every interview. He was like, King Kong, the original, was one of the reasons he became a director.
I started to worry that like the Anne character was a self-insert for Peter Jackson, and he just really wanted to be in love with King Kong, which I think is beautiful.
He is in love with King Kong.
I know.
There's no
but want. I mean, I think he wishes he could ice skate with Kong.
In a way, he did.
That's true. The creative process is kind of a magical thing.
I often think about his fucked up dog with a snaggletooth and how that influenced King Kong's character design significantly.
Did we watch all the DVD extras?
Yes, we did. We watched the collector's edition, the ultra awesome. Mega fuck pack. They did an entire documentary of not only the filming, but also the post-process production of that movie. And both the segments are like 12 hours long in total.
Mm-hmm. which is not surprising because the movie was pretty short.
I used to think that movie was as long as it was because it was Peter Jackson using his clout to convince the people to just let him have his movie be the length it wants to be, you know? Because like a 3 fucking hour long movie about King Goddamn Kong is a lot of time to dedicate to it. And so I was like, I guess there's no director's cut because the movie is the director's cut. And then I looked it up and I realized that there is in fact a director's cut that adds 30 more minutes of movie to King Kong.
30 more minutes of action.
A 3.5 hour long. I could be wrong. I don't care to check, but it's too long.
Yeah.
The version that we have feels too fucking long. They don't even set foot on the island until you're like over an hour in.
Yeah, the journey that I went on with King Kong the movie was like, oh wow, this is more interesting than I thought. To this movie sucks. And then it won me back. And I was like, wow, wait, this movie's fucking awesome. And then it
lost
going.
you again.
And it lost me again. And I was lost at sea for a very long time. And some part of me still has not washed back up on shore.
Yeah, I really liked the way you put it that night whenever we were like 2 hours in and you realized that we had another hour to go, where you were like, God, how did you put it? It's you likened it to like an amusement park ride that you couldn't get off of. It was just this feeling of like, wow, I feel like I've had my fill of this, but Peter Jackson won't let me off until he gets to say it's time to get off, and I don't know when that's gonna be.
Yeah,
it's like we were feeling like, man, this is nice. This is over before they even left the island.
Yeah.
Do you remember that horrible like 5+ minute long scene wherever the whole crew falls into a dark crevice and then bugs start eating them and then a choir plays and like it's the most R-rated PG-13 scene I've seen maybe ever?
Oh yeah, that was genuinely horrific. I don't have words strong enough to describe how fucked up that was.
I can't believe that scene is in this movie. I remember being traumatized by that as a kid.
It was a decision. I genuinely don't have any. You're reactivating neurons that I've been trying to strangle to death for months.
See, this is what I'm saying. There's so much to say about this movie. There's so much just fascinating, weird shit that happened.
What if we just never talked about anything in the video? You bill this as behind the scenes King Kong game video, and it's just us talking about the movie the entire time. This must be how veterans feel.
Let's fuck you. Let's not joke until we know what we're actually going to talk about for the next hour. Who's the guy who played Gollum? The fucked up guy?
Andy Serkis.
Serkis,
my fucking king.
Oh my god, dude. Him alone is just he's a walking case study. He's the most fascinating guy. He plays both a character and a guy in the movie, but mainly the character being Kong. He like one-ups his performance as Gollum by being the big monkey and doing like not just God, where do you begin? Also, is it important? Do we need to? I don't think we need to. See, again, this is the problem. This is what made writing that fucking video so hard. Is that you dip your toe in for 2 seconds and be like, oh, this is a cute little game. It's weird how cool this is. Then you do 1 ounce of research and you find like 10 fucked up things and you have to make sense of it all.
Yeah, you fucking dip your toe in the kiddie pool and Peter Jackson comes out, grabs your leg, tears you, and you're like, Peter Jackson, why the fuck are you in the kiddie pool? And he's like, I'm gonna fucking
Peter
drown
Jackson,
you.
No, don't change New Zealand's labor laws. No.
And then and so that I hope that was a helpful descriptor.
I think people will get it. It's just
I got away with words.
Yeah, because the trouble with making a video, pretty much every time is getting a bunch of information and then trying to find a narrative in it that is compelling and obviously true. And so it's really hard to do that when you're looking at a fuckload of information and all of it's interesting and all of it points at different things. And so I'm honestly kind of proud of the fact that you and I together were able to take everything going on and turn it into like a kind of story about the process of making a thing under pressure and without precedent,
Mm-hmm.
because it could have been on a lot of different things.
I really did push for the version of this video that was just a 30-minute long Andy Serkis fan cam, but you wouldn't go for it.
People would get bored after 5 minutes.
No, they wouldn't.
Whatever. Again, I said maybe if we put in other characters besides King Kong, maybe there would be enough footage.
Disrespectful.
You can't just play the same image of King Kong over and over again with rain pouring down with his motion capture face not working, so he looks like he's sulking in a corner.
So cool.
I'm never going to get over that. I found out after writing and creating and doing all the work for that video, the facial capture for the game didn't actually not work entirely. It was just like not entirely mapped or painted. It's like it wasn't as clear cut as I assumed, because of course it's not. Nothing is simple. But if I remember correctly, we had to do a lot of like educated guesswork and reeling back in terms of the jumps, the logical jumps that were made to try to figure out what the fuck happened with the different versions of the game, right?
Yeah. There was some deconstruction work that was attempted. But it's odd. It's odd because you're looking back so far, and the game industry also has a huge churn problem.
Right,
so like
exactly.
A lot of the people who would be around that you could talk to about that just weren't there anymore.
Yeah.
With one exception that we stumbled on.
Wait, hold on.
Do you remember the person I'm talking about?
No.
Do you remember the forum post?
No. You're scaring me now.
You will remember this. So we were during the section where we were talking about like the cross-gen differences. Like what were the big differences between the previous gen consoles and the new gen consoles with the features that they were trying to push? And while we were researching that, we stumbled upon a forum post by a guy who was like arguing with a bunch of gamers.
Oh my god,
like,
this
over a
guy
decade ago. And it was paragraphs upon paragraphs of almost trade secret violating illiterate discussion about how exactly the internals of these consoles
and like how
work.
that impacts the way that video games are rendered across consoles, and what like theoretical horsepower of a given system and its hardware equates to in terms of actual performance. There was some kind of stupid argument with gamers about like how, technically the GameCube's flipper has more fucking giga shits, but like it does not look better than a PS2 for X and Y or some shit like that.
Yeah, and this dude was arguing. I cannot stress to you the amount to which this conversation went like, fucking PS2 more powerful because Sony, and then this guy's, all right, here's a 3-paragraph deconstruction of how the fucking emotion engine works or whatever.
Like, information that, like, even now, even today, it's hard to find for the goddamn PS2. Never mind current consoles. Like, can you imagine someone trying to give you this level of documentation on a fucking PS5 without breaking an NDA of some kind?
Yeah, that was the most fucked up thing, is that it was like, this was not some homebrew hobbyist who was like looking back at a console generation. This was while that shit was relevant and current. The forum
like 2004. And just explaining the inner workings of a PS2 from the perspective of a guy who had to have known how it actually worked, because there is no fucking way that you get that information from anywhere else in 2004.
And the further we dug into this guy, the more we realized not only was there seemingly no bottom to his knowledge, as he started fucking pontificating in different places about like the relationships between different international semiconductor manufacturing companies, but also there was no limit to like the shreds of his presence that he kind of scattered all over the internet like flower petals in the wind.
He went by the same username for like 15 years.
Yeah, it was fucked up. And I
sourced him back. And
that ruined our night.
Yeah, we lost an entire night of research to figuring out what the fuck this guy's deal was.
That was gonna be our last thing. We were like, all right, let's just research this one let's fact check this last thing. And then we're gonna go to bed. And then we stayed up for several hours.
No, I didn't. Wasn't the conclusion that this was like a hobbyist turned like he was like a hobbyist who also was like really, really super knowledgeable on technology, who worked at a really old as fuck technology publication website. He was like the the technical touchstone guy of a website that no one knows about anymore, but was a big name back in like the 6th gen console cycle.
Big name for a very specific genre of hobbyists,
right?
Of hardware hobbyists, yeah. Which you even for that is like an insane amount of shit to just know.
Yeah, I think honestly, if I had to guess, it was like, now that I'm remembering this guy, I think what we figured out was that he
you're having a con.
He basically he was very knowledgeable, and he had to have known people on the inside who were able to talk shop with him, and he knew so much about tech already that he could talk the talk with them and get technical. So he was able to be a bridge towards people around him who were doing coverage side things, but he was also way more technically knowledgeable. So he served as like a middle ground. He was able to talk to people who were engineers and also people doing coverage, and he was able to get the access to that because he worked in coverage and he was way more technically minded, so people were willing to talk to him. Which is such a fascinating combination of things, because like nowadays that's like hard to come by, but those people exist. Arguably, Sam, you are one of those people. Back then, basically unheard of. That kind of shit didn't happen.
Yeah. By the way, we can verify almost none of this for sure. This is just our best fan fiction of who this guy is. It's the only
explanation that makes sense in my mind as to how this guy knows more. This guy is like arguing with gamer-brained freaks who are arguing that no, the GameCube has more awesomer graphics on GameFAQs.com.
That was the part that I loved. That was my fucking favorite part of it. Is that this is the part that I can relate to an extent. He is so fucking desperate to talk to people about his weirdly specific knowledge that he's just like, anyone that will listen, he's like, no, you guys have to understand this.
It's just such a losing battle every time. No one wanted to listen to him.
It was beautiful.
He was so clearly knowledgeable, and nobody fucking cared.
Right. He was climbing up the Empire State Building, and all that was up there for him were little planes and machine guns and other such things. He was rolling
that boulder up the hill. No matter how many times it came crashing down, he got right back to it. Oh, God. Yeah, so to give you an idea of how research usually goes, that's one of the reasons it can take so long.
Yeah, so that clarified about 3 sentences worth of the script.
Yeah, we almost, do you remember we came back to it like the following day or like whatever, we came back to it again? We almost fell into the cycle a second time because we forgot where we were. The night became figuring out what this guy's deal was.
This infinite black hole of wisdom.
I really, really wish we had found a way to contact the guy, because holy shit, I want to know more about that human being.
I think one of the like addresses posted for one of his affiliated businesses was like driving distance from my current location.
Oh yeah.
And that the idea that I could run into this guy on the street and not know has brought a little bit of wonder to my everyday life.
Think about how many people are out there who are like that. That guy who you like touched hands by mistake, and it was really awkward whenever you both reached for the same bunch of bananas at Walmart. He's part of the alt-right, and he sends a lot of money to like super PACs. But hey, that other guy who was behind you in checkout, he knew a lot about the PS2. He knew like a whole lot. Think about it.
We live in a world of wonders.
Think about it.
Yeah.
What else? God, there's so much. Yeah, all of that huge tangent I was trying to use to get more into the idea of the kinds of technological educated guesswork that we had to make. Mainly you, but you know, I helped. I did not help. Specifically in terms of like the next gen version. We had to peer into what is very clearly an unfinished product, or rather just a half-baked product, and try to figure out what the fuck happened and why it looks ugly as sin. And with no documentation on that, and with basically none of the people who made that game being reachable, and even if they were, why the fuck would they talk to us about this? And also, you must remember we were trying to make this a short video. We still thought we could do that back then. We kind of just had to figure it out from the outside looking in. And so You know, I don't know how video games are made. This is one of the reasons that Sam helps me write. Go on, Sam.
Oh yeah, no. Yeah, the thing that was kind of exciting and fun about this was being able to look at something that kind of looked ugly and bad, and instead of tearing that to shreds,
instead of
like
only
deconstructing
instead
how
of
that
exclusively
happened,
tearing that to shreds. I did not abstain.
You had some funny
It was
words
not.
to say.
I'm not above pointing at an ugly thing and laughing at the fact that it's ugly.
Yeah, this is why I can't go out in public with you. But
it was one time.
But yeah, so like I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting and cool. And part of my background is not just making video games, but like in my younger years, I also did a bunch of homebrew research for the PS2, and like I wanted to make games on the Wii, and the only thing I ended up actually making games for was the Game Boy Color, which is not fucking relevant here. But that's besides the point. Stop
you saying
getting
the
off
same
track.
thing
Jesus Christ.
twice, but getting angry the second time you say it with different words. Cool. Anyway,
True.
so you did research on the PS2 and the Wii.
Yes. What the fuck were we
Jesus
talking
Christ.
about again?
We were talking about the fact that we had to do a lot of guesswork to try to figure out what went wrong with the next gen release.
Yeah, I mean, most of what I would have to say on this made it into the video. I think the interesting thing that took a lot of our time that didn't necessarily make it into the video was the work of opening up RenderDoc and trying to like step by step through the fucking PC version of the game to see how it was rendering.
Everyone, I didn't know this until Sam showed me. Is basically if you know what reshade is it kind of uses the same technological approach under the hood in terms of like, oh, this game runs DirectX. We can kind of squeeze our way in there and do shit, you know, and peel back the layers of what's going on in the graphics card real time. Except instead of using that to make awesome fucking graphics, it's a open source debugging tool that graphics and general engineers use in order to just debug rendering. And basically everyone uses it apparently. But you can basically take a snapshot of something that the GPU is rendering on any given frame, and then open it up in the program, and pass by pass, piece by piece, physical object texture, every single individual compute that the graphics card applies, it can be viewed individually, step by step, and fucking exported as a 3D image file, along with all of the textures and everything else, which to me is fucking crazy. I had no idea that was something that anyone could do, never mind that easily. But that's how we got the stuff out of King Kong. There was no reverse engineering required. We just opened up RenderDoc and told it to give us the frame, and it did. Which is fucking crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, there was some additional shit required. But yeah, it's like RenderDoc. The way that games normally render their shit is like they build a list of instructions for the GPU. They hand that off to DirectX, OpenGL, Vulkan, whatever. And then through that interface, it gets passed off to the graphics card. And RenderDoc stands in between and intercepts that list of instructions and just lets you walk through it. It's very neat. And we had a time lapse that I don't think got used in the video, but where I just kind of held the down key through the entire rendering process of one of the early frames. And you could see exactly how all the geometry was chunked up in the particle. It was
how Dolphin did it, which may not be the same as how the GameCube does it, but
I did some captures of the PC version too. At least of the little that I was able to get into, because the PC version works really well in 2024.
I can't believe that it is.
And really loves being intercepted.
That it was easier to capture an emulated GameCube version of the game and its rendering process than the actual natively running Windows version of the game. What a cool omen. Can you believe that
I love it.
As hard as it was, you remember how hard it was to get that game running on your PC.
Mm-hmm.
Can you believe that is the easier to run version, and the actual version, the non-gamers edition, has DRM that is very likely to completely annihilate your operating system beyond repair by installing a rootkit that doesn't work and just corrupts your registry?
Oh man, promise you free me from this prison, please? King Kong wreak havoc on my OS? Make me not have to work anymore?
It's really just crazy that there's a game that wants not to be played that bad.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, the rest of the industry is very good about preservation. so we don't have anything to worry about.
But yeah, no, back to the point. The render doc thing was fascinating and a great learning experience for me. But moreover, I just like the process that we had to go through in order to try to figure out what was happening, and the guesses that we had to make in order to figure out, how things got to the way they did. And I was especially fascinated by the I don't know, I guess the conclusion that you had walked me through, and then I stole from you and said, as in my own words, about how specifically like physical models and like the way that they are shaded was so fundamentally different between the two different versions of the game, right? Because, in the original, in the old 6th gen version, most of the consoles couldn't do something as complicated as even bump map texturing. That was like one of Xbox's really cool things that it could do that no one else could, was make something look bumpy without having to physically model it. And then suddenly we jumped to the 360, and for the first time you could do a lot more shit just for real instead of, approximating it. And it was really hard because I didn't properly understand these concepts and still don't in much detail. And I had to try to, we both kind of shared this particular challenge, but we had to try to find a way to translate this extremely technical set of ideas into something that someone who does not know how programming works could understand conceptually.
Yeah. Like the really abstract idea that we were trying to get at was that there isn't just like a more or less detail option when it comes to how your game looks. How that detail is rendered matters. And the original GameCube, Xbox versions had a lot of that detail baked into the textures directly. Whereas the next gen version, it seemed like it was reaching for, can we get this detail being generated on the fly, more advanced, more dynamic lighting, which means that you have to like reduce the detail on the textures so that you can bring it back in different places.
Not even necessarily. Whenever they hear the phrase reduced detail, they think like, oh, you turn the resolution down. When it's like, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating challenge, and I think this is probably one of the reasons that it came out.
A much better way to put it would be to removing information from the texture so you can bring it back in other places.
Yeah,
like shadows. You're not painting the shadows into the texture
information
anymore.
Is a very vague and confusing word to use, and so real examples, I think, help to illustrate this, right? And it's a weird contradictory statement on the surface, because it's like, how do you remove detail by increasing fidelity or vice versa? Like, you have a more high resolution texture, there's more pixels in the texture, and yet you're saying we need less information in it? But it's like, you need to find a way to retroactively make the texture more resolution-y. It has to be a bigger image, so it holds more raw data, but it also needs to be more neutral in its presentation.
I think explaining rendering techniques without any visual aid is a winning formula.
We could cut all this.
I mean, well, this is exactly why.
You know what? That's a good point.
The idea that we had, which is basically if we want to actually show the process of trying to emulate like what the Xbox version's models were going for, but maybe couldn't reach at that time, and also show the difference between what the PlayStation 2 version was actually doing versus modern rendering context, is like, what if we just removed both of these models from their original context and put them fucking next to each other in a Blender scene and did shit to them directly?
Basically, we fixed Aloy.
Like we
hire fans.
This is a win for the fans.
So, I mean, we talked about how the awesome graphics are so cool and great, right? Did we really go into like the kinds of logical guesswork we had to make? Did we really explain that? Because we talk very authoritatively in the video, because we're confident in the guesswork we made, but like took a lot of work to get there.
Yeah. I mean, if you have anything specific on your mind that you want to jump into with guesswork, I'm super happy to.
Well,
off the top of my head,
conceptually, right? Like, we don't actually know that the reason that those textures look so flat and ugly and gross and, you know, pasty and strange and like not quite mapped right onto models and shit like that, like we don't know why that happened. We assume that the reason is because they wanted to rely more heavily on real-time rendering. And
it was like that or some crossover with their film pipelines where they were already using super advanced rendering techniques and they just pulled in the textures from there and modified them for the game.
I mean, I'm quite confident that's at least part of it, right? I mean, because, you know, we saw the unwrapped UV texture of like Anne's face, and it's straight up just like a picture of her face. So like, like there's no way that Ubisoft got the actress in there to do that. That's like Weta sent them an image of her photo scan. I assume. But like that still only gets us so far. We still had to make a pretty big logical leap from like, okay, they have the assets from Weta, or they got these really high quality photo scans somehow, right? How do you get from that to they wanted to use this to simulate things like subsurface scattering and bump map texturing and real-time shadows and lighting and shit like that? Like that's still a big jump.
I mean, yeah, I guess to me it feels like a slightly smaller leap because I've worked in these pipelines a lot. So like I can look at that texture and be like, I have fucking seen this before. Especially, I also have some visual effects knowledge because I watched a little bit too much Freddie Wong channel when I was in my younger years, and I was like, this is
resource
what I'm gonna do
you
for
are
the rest of my life.
Now,
dude, you
practically work at Weta.
Dude, in high school, I would, because I grew up adjacent to LA. I would like cold email different people in the industry and just ask to like hang out.
Oh, are you gonna go into the Santa Monica story?
This is a new story. This is a different story. Through other various means, but I got into contact with someone who worked at Digital Domain, which was James Cameron's visual effects studio that's gone under like 3 times, and every time they go under, they relaunch with another number after their name.
That's
it's
so
really
cool, especially because James Cameron isn't even working with them right now, or whether he probably is, but instead Weta is like the poster child with all the Avatar stuff. That's so cool. That is so cool.
As Digital Domain is awesome. Anyway, so yeah, I ditched school to grab an Uber to go up to the Digital Domain offices, where I was given a tour and I was taken later into this basement area. They said, Doug was giving demos earlier. You kind of missed him, but he's still down there in the basement. And I was like, okay, who's Doug? But I didn't say that out loud for fear of disturbing whatever was about to unfold. They took me into this basement, walked me past the Titanic model from the movie James Cameron Titanic.
How big was it?
And when I go down, it's the model. Yeah. You're not going to believe this, but it was not a bit as big as the actual Titanic.
What?
I don't know. How am I supposed to communicate this over voice? It's this big. I'm holding my arms out.
Yeah.
Can you hear this? It was about
I'm gonna
this
put
big.
Foley in there of like clothing movement so that we can
the fucking balloon stretching. Yeah. Anyway, they take me down the stairs and I enter this dimly lit basement with papers scattered everywhere. And in the far corner of the room, behind his corner desk, stands a tall man who I immediately discover is Doug.
No
the
way.
First words that he says to me, yo, they fucking they gave me an extra egg roll.
Oh yeah. You did tell me the story.
I was like, do you want it? And before he even fucking asked my name, and I swear to God, I've never been more immediately endeared to a human being in my entire life. I've been in relationships where I was so in love with a person, and that's like at best second place to Doug Roble. I'm sorry. The egg roll is pretty good. But what he was working on was actually the precursor to Unreal Engine's metahumans. He was working on using like deep learning to do facial animation tracking from just a phone without any markers and doing the digital facial scans. Yeah, and like fucking years later, seeing his face pop up during the fucking MetaHumans pre-announcement as a 3D digital model felt like a jump scare. But
no, just watching a digital announcement and just suddenly seeing Doug the egg roll guy.
Doug Roble, Academy Award winner Doug Roble, who once gave me an egg roll when I was like 15, is now rotating at me in a black void.
I hope he hears the story from your perspective someday, because it's really funny.
Doug, let's talk. Let's fucking hang out. I'm still via LA, all right, dude. I'm sure he subscribed to your Patreon.
For sure. I bet you if you cold emailed the guy, he'd probably get back to you. He seems like the type of guy who would.
Honestly might. He doesn't work at Digital Domain anymore. He does some other shit now.
If we ever get this podcast off the ground and we start getting guests on to interview, he's definitely a guy we should reach out to.
Yeah. We'll reach out to Doug.
And you need to just tell the story again to him, and like just so that so that we can get his perspective on that day.
He won't remember.
Yeah, no, that's what makes it so good. Is that he of course he won't remember. So you're gonna tell it to him, and it's gonna like bring back a fuckload of memories about that day.
And at the beginning of the podcast, as we are introducing to the audience this unbelievably multi-decade accolade, one of the most accomplished people who's ever worked in the visual effects industry, we will introduce him as the egg roll guy.
I mean, I'm thinking about like the other equally funny possibility that you tell him the story and it does not jog a single memory and he just has no fucking idea.
I'm sure that's what's gonna happen. I would bet on it.
It's so fucking good.
Oh man,
King Kong.
Anyway, all this to say is like pretty obsessed with like film VFX pipelines and game pipelines, and I watched the two converge as the years went on, and I became a legal adult and started paying taxes.
Every fact I learn about video games cements the idea to me that video games should not exist, and the fact that anything runs on anything and works ever is just evil and fucked up.
Yeah, I was worried you were going to say a miracle for a second, and I was going to have to correct you, but it's evil and fucked up.
No, do not conflate any of what I'm saying with positivity. They shouldn't work. You shouldn't eat food.
Listen, I don't know. What part of, I guess, what you're describing is like the role of being a communicator, and it seems like you're talking about, if I understand what you're saying, you feel a lot of responsibility attached to.
I don't like
being a communicator.
I don't like that particular phrasing because it feels self-aggrandizing in a way. It's like it's so hard to bear the burden of talking accurately about the technicalities of graphics rendering in King Kong 2005 for the 360. But it was a learning experience in trying to take educated guesses that would actually be educational. It was an exercise in technical translation that is way more involved than anything that I've done before. And I had to do a lot of trusting you and educating myself in order to make that work and make sense in a way that I could confidently explain to hundreds of thousands of people.
Yeah. And that's really cool because it gave me the latitude to lie about one major part of it that I haven't told you about. But once that video comes out, you're going to get raked over the fucking coals, my man.
People who have long since retired from the industry are going to come right out of the woodworks to tell you how fucking stupid you are.
Yeah. I'm just going to watch. But yeah, sure hope we didn't fuck anything up too bad. I think we couched the speculation well enough that we could
kinda. I mean, we did bake some speculative terminology into it, but at the same time, we also baked confidence very clearly into the wordage. So kind of a coin toss. I don't know. I mean, unless you are talking to people who make the thing, you're gonna get some stuff wrong. I think that when you're making coverage like this, you kind of just have to accept that you're never gonna get everything 100% right, and so you kind of just need to talk as if you are guessing, because you are, and that needs to be clear. And I hope we did a good job this time. I've certainly fucked that up before.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we are the obstinate gamers in the forum that one guy is pleading with.
Good callback. We tied it all around.
Yeah, and even more than that, my position as a pisser of words on the internet that some people listen to. Yeah, like I am a game developer. I've shipped a bunch of projects. I've worked with companies of varying sizes, but I am not an expert in everything. And my expertise in some things helps me understand more. So like I can watch GDC talks and read white papers about rendering techniques and generally get it because I've done game engine building work. But that authority can also like lend my misunderstandings about things that are out of my reach more credibility. And like, for example, there was a Twitter thread that someone made dunking on like, why is it that whenever I pull up the riot shield in Call of Duty Warzone, my frame rate goes down? And I responded to it with my best speculation educated guess. And I wasn't.
That is objectively a very funny reason for your frames to drop, but go on.
Oh, yeah, no, it's fucking hilarious. And like my best educated guess was in the right realm, but it was, as it was pointed out to me, there was like some more nuance with like exactly why that would have been happening.
As is and always the case.
Yeah. And so like normally
my least favorite lesson that I continually am learning every time we hit a project, usually multiple times, is that you can make educated guesses and they're usually in the ballpark, but it's always, always, always more complicated than you thought in ways you couldn't have predicted. And you're going to be wrong. And it's going to fucking suck learning about how you're wrong because it involves learning a lot of things that you did not know about.
Yeah. And the question is like, all right, is the simplification that people are going to take away from this, is that going to lead to a greater understanding if they dig further into it? Or is it going to block them from learning more? And for me, in this specific case, I before the tweet had picked up too much traction, I'd already seen people confidently repeating an even more reductive version of what I had said, which is like they had taken what I had said. It had been interpreted as putting transparent objects on screen is bad and you should never do it. But it's like,
oh God, no.
It's just again, it's like there is a cost to doing transparent objects, especially if you're doing crazy shader math and you're like covering up the full screen. There's all this shit going on. Yeah. But it was like,
I mean, I assume that there are so many fucking transparency in general in games. Famously, well, not famously,
we have not figured it out yet.
Yeah, it's like, I mean, and that fundamentally, the nature of how we do rendering makes transparency uniquely difficult.
Yeah.
You ever wonder why when a character in a video game is wearing glasses and there's a blur on the screen, but the glasses behind the glasses are not blurry? The answer to that question would take like 10 minutes to explain, and it fucking sucks.
Yeah, it's there's so many levels.
Yeah.
Anyway, so fucking if you ever want to go mad, look into why transparency in video games is still an unsolved problem in 2024.
One of these days we got to do one of these, and it's just an hour of like listing off all of the things that we've had to learn, and how it's like it seems so simple, and then 3 days go by, and you know less than when you started.
Yeah. It's
we both have like a collection of those. It's so maddening.
Yeah. It's wonderful and maddening, and it makes you a little it takes away a little piece of you and it gives you a new different piece to put it in its place.
a new darker piece.
You just kind of got to hold all those together until eventually you go Joker mode, and that's the end of your career.
Yeah, isn't it so cool that how old are you again?
I'm 8.
Okay. And you're like by turnover standards in the industry, you can be considered a veteran in some circles.
Yeah. In game developer years, I am 22 years old, but because of how long I have been working in this industry, I am somehow like, oh yeah, I've been around the block to an extent. Like I'm not one of the long. I'm not part of the old guard.
You're not green,
but I am considered experienced, and I have some amount of respect among my peers, which is distressing to me. There are people much smarter than me who think that I'm smart sometimes, and that scares me.
Oh man, I know that feeling. I'm also fucking smart and awesome, and everyone wants to have sex with me, but I tell them no.
Yeah, I
mean that's what you're saying, right?
Yeah, more or less.
The thing I was going to bring up was just the whole other part of that video and how that came to be. Because the reason that I say I, but really we, because again, you wrote almost half of that script in some form. The reason that we talked about it the way we did,
sorry, continue.
That's funny because it's true. The reason that it came out the way it did is largely because of the initial reaction that we had playing it that first time. And I think that you and I, especially you, were like uniquely set up to have a strong reaction to the way this game was designed.
Yeah.
Do you remember the arc you went through whenever you first experienced this game like in action?
Yes. And I can even talk about the part that I thought that I couldn't talk about now.
Yeah, we should cover that.
Yeah. Fuck. I mean, so we both went into that, first of all, as gamers, with some expectations about.
Yeah, we had expectations, like you know, this was largely spurred on by Nelson's article that he wrote forever ago for Polygon about why this game is weirdly good and deserves to be remembered.
Yeah.
Which incidentally also influenced a lot of how we talked about it.
Yeah,
but
it's good art.
We all this to say, we came in with like pretty high expectations. We like someone who we both respect a lot said that like this is an anomalously good video game for what it is.
Yeah, it
and yet.
Yeah, we were not prepared for the extent to which, because I figured, even based off of the excellent article, that there was some amount of like interpretation that was happening there in terms of like, I can see what they were shooting for, and it's really ambitious and cool. I didn't expect them to have fucking nailed all of it.
Yeah, like Nelson was underselling part of this game in a few areas. Like I don't think the article explains quite the extent to which this game is weirdly good at what it shoots for at a time where no one has even shot for it before.
Yeah.
They fucking came onto the scene and did a better job than most of the people in the entire next generation would spend trying to figure this shit out.
Yeah, it was baffling, and it was bafflingly consistent at it.
Yeah.
Because we played through all of the Halo games, and we would remark every time there was a beautiful vista or like an awesome scene where it just kind of led you into looking at the world in just the right way. And it was
like to be
awesome.
clear, Bungie, incredibly good at doing that. But if there's one thing that they took a lot of time to learn how to do better, it's directing the player's attention to those beautiful vistas. They give players a little bit too much credit sometimes in terms of what they hope they'll pay attention to. And I mean, you know, me being the lore dump walking Halo trivia guy that I am, I can tell you like the multiple developer documentary moments have them just like talking shit on their own experience of like, yeah, here's that really cool sequence that no player ever looked at. Do you remember the bit in like the opening of Halo 2 where like the stations outside in space just blow up?
Yep.
And you're supposed to, like no one, absolutely nobody saw that.
I had to turn around when you pointed it out to me so I could go.
Yeah, I had to like very actively direct your attention to it. So it's like all this just, and I don't think that's any player's fault. Players are, you know, they want to play video game. They are distracted by any number of things. Directing a player's attention without ripping the control out of said player is extremely, extremely difficult to pull off. Even the masters of this, Valve and Bungie, took a really long time to get that right. I would argue that Valve only really figured it out with Portal 2 and Bungie only really figured it out with Halo 3. And even then, it's not all like home runs. They only usually get it right. So when you go to King Kong and it's like it doesn't miss ever. It takes you have to like confront a lot of things about what you thought was like the best thing ever.
Yeah, it's consistent, and it doesn't make too many. It makes the right sacrifices in terms of like all of those places are still very functional gameplay wise.
Yeah,
it's great. And the weird thing that this is one of the things that didn't make it into the video. The really weird thing for me is like I have been doing VR work for many, many years. And the set of constraints that they chose to make King Kong cinematic as fuck
are so analogous.
It's so analogous
to the exact same constraints that you have to make in a completely different industry for unrelated reasons, kind of.
Yeah, how do you communicate information when you don't have like a heads up display to put on screen? You know, how do you make the most of like physical interactions? There was a moment.
How do you direct a player's attention when you are not allowed to rip control out of the player's viewport?
Yeah,
like whenever the player is fully in control at all times, how do you direct their attention?
Yeah, it was It was a mind fuck. And what got even crazier as I played. So I was working on a game called Stranger Things VR at this time.
Yeah.
And the slow creeping realization that I had as Julian played through the opening levels of Kong, as he was picking up spears and objects in the environment and throwing them at enemies as he navigated this tall, rocky cliffside, was like, oh my God, I think we just fucking made King Kong. I think we just fucking made King Kong for at least one section of that game. I was not on that project the entire time. I was like doing combat design stuff for the better part of the last year of it. That was my role. But yeah, it was like, Jesus Christ, I have been designing this throwing object system from shit in the environment that you can pull in. And I'm just watching it have been made to an extent in 2004. It was an experience. And I did check with the team, and none of them had played the King Kong game.
That makes it so much cooler.
Yeah, this was just kind of like the King Kong game, as I understand it now, is just kind of something that floats around all of us as an ether, and we just kind of breathe it in, and it makes its way into our work. The King Kong is a game that wants to be made, and it wants to be made over and over again. And that's why we have
finding
Uncharted.
new ways to get made. Yeah.
It's a sentient being.
Shame about the racism.
Yeah. Oh man.
I really wish that I could have found a tasteful way to talk about how fucking funny it is that, like, especially on the PC version, whenever there's the racism reveal, whenever the doors come up and you see the really tasteless depiction of indigenous people for the first time in full, your player character just like isn't hit by anything. He just takes damage from nothing, and it's like it scanned it to me the first time like it was implied that seeing native people inflicted psychic damage upon this guy.
He just couldn't stand to see the misrepresentation of, and it hurt his heart. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
So like I wanted, so for the movie, we did not really know what we were getting into when it came to that, and the arc of the movie scene was really cool because it hits you with this like, holy fuck moment.
It's so bad.
It's real bad. And then it ends and you're like, thank fucking God that's over.
Thank God they aren't showing us just every single version of a dark-skinned person homogenized into a single thing and then filmed and depicted the same way he depicted fucking orcs in Lord of the Rings. Thank God that's over.
Yeah, it was it's just like, oh, thank God the fucking stereotype 1940s inspiration King Kong is over.
Yeah.
And then they come back.
On big long sticks, like
so
pogo
fucking
sticks.
Long. It was something.
Like the biggest meta middle finger I think I've ever experienced watching a movie.
Yeah. So the thing is, like, the part of that experience that stuck out the most to me was that moment of hope that it was over. Because that was an experience I got to have twice.
Yeah, no, because oh my God, yeah, okay. I was trying to find a way to get back to the game, but I don't think I could have thought of a better way than that. Because the way that we were teased into believing that the racism was not going to come back in the movie so perfectly mirrored the amount of hope that we had and then lost whenever we came into the game after having watched the movie and thinking to ourselves, maybe they won't include that part. Maybe we can like the game without any asterisks.
Because the game...
And then there's a door that reveals them. Like a
prize.
Pans up. Yeah.
Like
there's like a whole sequence, like a 5 to 10 minute sequence, depending on how you play, building up the reveal of how racist they are.
Yeah, because the story of the game is not 1-to-1 with the story of the movie. It's modified.
Yes, we were. So, like, if there's one modification that it would be really cool if they had made, it would be that one.
Yeah,
they sure weren't afraid to take liberties in other places.
And the cool part is, like, even after that, it also came back again in the sequence where you as King Kong are just fucking obliterating the last.
Yeah, we thought that the worst
society.
thing was just like we thought that it was just gonna be, oh no, dark people on island are scary because they're different, and then that was it. And then you play as King Kong.
Yeah.
And it gets so much worse. I had to, like, that part of the video went through so many iterations because it was so hard to figure out how to tastefully show something that is so inherently distasteful.
Yeah, it's...
And, like, there's so much gameplay I elected not to show because it's just awful. It's just so bad. And it's even more weird to me to be able to confidently say that the video game is not as bad as the movie.
Yeah, on the tier list.
Yeah, if I had to grade them.
Yeah,
and me as a person who's very qualified to do this.
Yeah, it is the worst of all crimes, second worst of all crimes. It's cringe. It's really, really embarrassing. And in the behind the scenes footage when we were watching that,
oh god,
they had so many justifications for it too,
and none of them were good.
Yeah,
it's like it was just one really, really bad argument after another.
Yeah. And in the next fucking King Kong thing that they made, they just kind of pretended, just kind of brushed that off to the side. It didn't happen.
Yeah, it's really cool that the solution to a historically racist thing from its very conception in current year is to just kind of be like, I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah,
Have you seen the bugs on the island? Let's talk about those.
Remember the bugs? Yeah.
Big bugs. Though. Think about it. They're so big. Dinosaur.
Remember when he opens up the T-Rex's jaw and he cracks it open and it goes, ah! You know, that's like...
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
That was actually fucked up. It's like that the trivia to know that, like, whenever he peels the T-Rex's mouth open and it's really visceral and unpleasant, that is an homage to the original movie, which also did that.
Awesome.
But then, like, they took it further by having King Kong crush that jaw into the ground and then start waggling it around and, like, ragdolling with the remains of the T-Rex to make sure he's dead.
Yeah, like a fucking wrestler on heroin, just going crazy, no limits.
I don't know. I mean, I'm going to be honest. As weird as it is to say, I do think that helps to sell the animalistic nature of King Kong in that scene, because that's absolutely some shit an animal would do after killing another animal. They do. They just play with the corpses sometimes. It's so fucking morbid.
Andy Serkis.
Did I ever tell you the story of how my dog killed 3 chickens within the span of 1 minute once in my backyard?
1 minute.
1 minute.
You've not told me this story, and you're describing it like a speed run.
I mean, that's how she fucking took it.
Jesus Christ.
My jaw was on the floor.
That's so grim.
I straight up, I did not have the time to try to get her to stop because I looked at my phone. I heard some weird noises, and by the time I looked up and realized what was happening, it was over. And she was happily trotting back to me with a chicken's neck in her mouth.
Christ. So you
hey, it was over quick,
and you saw
it was over for them quick.
Yeah,
like those instincts are fucking crazy. She just knew to go for the neck. I don't know how the hell that works. You know, that's how farmers will also kill chickens sometimes. Is they just use their body weight against them. They just grab them by the neck and like twirl them around real quick, like a little. And then it's like it's over.
You're doing a really awesome Peter Jackson impression right now behind the scenes of Kong.
Yeah, this is how we talked about his fucked up snaggletooth inbred dog.
She's a killer.
They called her Monster, yeah. I think.
Probably.
I don't remember. I think it was a guy also. Who cares? I'm misgendering a pug. An inbred pug, no less.
This is...
What a beautiful behind-the-scenes sequence.
Yeah.
I wish I could... Sam, I really do wish I could just like King Kong, the movie and video game, without like several asterisks.
I wish that Peter Jackson decided to make a shorter movie, and I know exactly which scenes I would have asked him to cut.
This reminds me of all of the behind the scenes stuff we watched about King Kong from the VFX team, and how you could just see the anger pouring through the animators, especially, and like the self-control that they had to exude not to say things that would get them entirely cut from the behind the scenes and also probably fired. And also the amount of editing that had to be done to try and mitigate how much these guys clearly fucking hate what they're doing right now.
Yeah, there was an aura of malice that we felt, like, and we couldn't clarify because we didn't have access to the source footage, but like there was a lot of this was a really interesting shot to work on. We had
my favorite
revisions.
My absolute favorite rendition of that was the animator who was talking about how like the shot, like he was specifically in charge of like the debris and like the technicalities of like destruction in the New York City scenes, talking about how it's crazy how King Kong is traveling faster than the speed of light in between these two frames here out of a building into the center of the shot. If you look at all of that debris, like every single plank of wood, that's physically simulated. Yeah. It's the rancid vibes gotten from some of those interviews.
Yeah.
I like that we're giving the listeners homework.
Yeah, just like, here's all this other shit.
Yeah. Despite this video being so long, it's also one of the more dense ones that I've made. And so it's like, it's really hard to shoehorn anything in anywhere.
Yeah.
Because we spent a lot of time boiling things down so that they were more digestible.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's something that a lot of people don't understand about script writing generally, or at least, and especially because a lot of people who aren't good at writing just don't bother with that. And that's how you get hour-long videos with 10 minutes worth of information in them, is that if you want something to be good and concise, you have to spend a really large amount of time trying to think about the most efficient way to convey ideas, without rambling or repeating yourself or being vague or using too many words.
Yeah.
It's very hard. Yeah, the more you condense your ideas down, the harder it is to retrofit new ideas into them.
Yeah.
And so by the time we had really figured out a structure for this and like gotten a flow and a string of ideas and formed a narrative, it was very hard to find places for comparatively frivolous things like the funny details of how interviews were edited in the promotional interview for the video game. Like, It sucks, but it would have been a silly idea to rewrite a large section around being able to make fun of editing. These are the kinds of decisions that would have added another week to the production of the video, at least.
Man, that Cory Barlog footage that Rio found was a fucking blessing for the opening, though.
Yeah, holy shit.
Rio was there. By the way, I want you to go back and rethink about all these situations we've been talking about, playing the game and watching the movie. There was a third party there. This was Rio. It was a hero.
Yeah, we just had another person.
Mm-hmm.
I am almost tempted to include them as like a special thanks and or additional writing credit, because if for no other reason, the emotional support that they provided us throughout the process of this is really it cannot be overstated.
Yeah, we were the Kong Brothers 3 throughout all of that.
Yeah.
They're the only other person who knows what it was like out there.
Yeah.
As I said before, this must be how it feels to be a veteran.
Yeah.
I think that's really tasteful.
Yeah. We were all in the plains together shooting at Kong. I can't believe that I couldn't find a place to talk about the alternate good ending in the video game. Remember that?
No.
How could you forget?
What was the alternate good ending?
If you get enough points in the King Kong game, like getting good scores by like, being accurate and like beating it under a certain level of time or whatever the fuck, you would unlock a bonus level where you replay the ending of the game where you scale the tower as Kong. But then if you survive long enough, the perspective changes and you play as Jack with the captain in one of the fighter planes, and your job is to shoot down all the other planes to protect Kong.
Holy shit, that's so cool.
And if you do it, then you save Kong, and then a loading screen occurs, and you're rewarded with a final cutscene where it's implied that they load Kong back onto the ship, bring him back to the island, and you just fly around the island while Kong walks up to like the ledge and roars a bunch, and that's it. Just you saved Kong.
Sounds so fucking made up. I almost don't believe you.
You saw it. I showed you.
I cannot. If this is the
There's
one
a good
thing that
ending.
I
There's a bonus
blocked
good
out
ending
about this experience, I'm gonna be so pissed off.
I can't believe you
This
forgot.
is the only thing that I actually managed to repress. Are you kidding me?
It's so good. How did you forget?
The fucking Wii Sports Resort dogfighting ending. That's the thing I got rid of.
No, and that's not even the best part. It's not the dogfight. It's the fact that it is implied through a loading screen that you just shipped him back to Skull Island.
That fucker back to Skull Island.
Just send him back. You fly around,
Sorry,
you do a
man.
joyride around the island, and you just see Kong smiling.
Yes, it fucking sorry we like abducted you. Put you back. That's how the law works.
It's all okay now.
You kidnap someone, but you put them back.
Yeah, we learned our lesson.
Yeah. Oh my god. Who the fuck paid for that? The property damage. Is it that?
It's okay. We put him back.
Put him back. No, he should have had to help rebuild. Anyway,
he does not get to go home until he helps he lifts up every single metal bar that they need to rebuild the fucking Empire State Building.
Clean up your mess, sir. We abducted you from your home.
You broke through that theater faster than the speed of sound. Clean it up.
This was a Mach 5 monkey. Oh my god.
That's a good place to end it, I think.
Fair enough. Yeah. Now you know. I'll do the ending of the cast musical. Now you know everything you need to know about monkeys.
Yeah.
So
I'm really sad that Asus didn't accept that one pitch that we had, wherever we could just like we would like bring the laptop into like just a zoo, and just give the laptop to a monkey and see what they do with it.
I think he would have gamed. I think he would have booted up.
I think
King
it's okay
Kong
for I think it's
Gamers
okay for
Edition.
me to say this. Whenever I pitched it to Asus, the number one concern that they had was like, what if the monkey breaks the laptop? And I was like, yeah, I know. That's kind of what I was worried about. But think about how funny that would be. And somehow, tragically, that did not win them over.
Convince him?
And we had yeah, that didn't work
We
out.
can workshop it, right? We can roll up a big TV and just kind of come with a stockpile of wireless gaming mice and just kind of keep throwing them in as they get broken until he learns.
Right. Until he learns to game with it.
Yeah.
Fuck the typewriter theory. I want to put a bunch of monkeys inside of a room with a bunch of gaming laptops and see how long it is until they learn how to play Fortnite with each other.
That would explain a lot about the matches I get into. 'Cause, let me tell you, I don't deserve those kills.
Have I shown you that one video of where was playing a game of Call of Duty? Someone in the team, as we're loading in, is like,
wait, there's 34 player in that map, dude.
Yeah.
half the people in the VC are just screaming like monkeys. There's someone buried in there meowing like a cat for some reason. COD matches are something else.
The world is a place.
Yeah.
And it's filled with
What I'm trying to say is that Asus really should have approved that monkey idea.
Asus.
Because it's really not all that different from you and I when you think about it.
Yeah, what are you afraid of? Evolution? Grow
What does that mean?
Oh, the monkeys could potentially join the workforce or outpace us.
They'd love
at our own
that.
game.
They could pay them so little.
Mhm.
This is a lot like King Kong, actually, if you think about it.
We should make a game about that.
Yeah.
In 2000.
Yeah. We should make the first good King Kong story where we actually we embrace the racism analogy, but we're we're like woke about it, you know?
Could not fucking begin to fathom what that means. I'm
Perfect.
rotating it in my mind, and it is.
I'm rotating a 3D model of King Kong in my mind right now.
That's so beautiful. How the fuck do we play this out?
I feel like we just cut it off a while ago. I mean, no, I did wanna actually close it off by just asking for people to tell us their thoughts on this, because we're trying to figure out how to actually do a podcast because we want more money. And this is an easy way to get more money.
Yeah.
But no, we wanted to do this for a while. It's been very difficult to get off the ground because we keep not liking what we're recording. So any pointers would be great in terms of what you liked or didn't.
To be clear, the podcast will not be us just talking about King Kong every week.
It could be, though. It could.
It shouldn't. The idea is
we'll talk about it off mic later.
Generally, the idea is I know a lot about game development and a little about content creation, and you have the opposite kind of flip of knowledge. And so between both of us,
we're like
we make
yin and yang, except both of us are white.
That is exactly true. Have you guys ever seen a circle before? That's kind of like what we're describing here. So if you want more of that.
What was the one that was really funny that we came up with that was a name for a podcast that we could not use, but I really wanted to?
I know there was one that you described. Was it white noise?
Yes, that was the one.
Already exists.
Yeah, someone came up with that like a couple years ago. Also, would have been pretty hard to market.
Yeah, because also like that's not even remote. It's not related to anything in the podcast.
Yeah. No, it's just a funny idea.
The other good one was Final V2.
Yeah, but someone else also had that idea.
Yeah.
That one I was so enthusiastic about that one. I really fucking liked that one.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Now we're gonna have to give it a fucking stupid name like the Giant Bombcast. Sorry, they're nice people.
Like probably. The Pipe Bombcast.
Oh, there it is.